Hi, and this video is on our course assessment in more detail. So here's the assessment for Gender and the Law. You'll see this same grid is available online on the assessment page. So we've got three basic types of assessment in this course. A series of online quizzes at the end of each module, each quiz being worth 5% for a total of 20%. We have a major project and a proposal for that major project. And I'm going to look at these in more detail one by one. So our first type of assessment. So here are our quizzes, and there are 4 of them. Each quiz is worth 5 marks and 5% of your total marks for Gender and the Law. There is a total of 20 marks worth of quiz assessment, or 20% of the total course assessment. Those quizzes are in modules 2, 3, 4 and 5. Each of them covers their own module, plus the module 2 quiz also covers modules 1 and 2. There could be questions on anything in the module, including the theory and the case studies and history or statistics or whatever else I have put into that module. They'll be available from week 3. And you have to finish them by 11:59 p.m. on Friday of week 12. You can do them at any time in that 9-week span. However, you should have done the module first, and once you open the quiz, you have 24 hours to complete the version that you're given. You can only have one attempt at it, so you've got 24 hours and one final attempt to put in. You cannot repeat the quizzes. You will not have the same quiz questions as your friends. Basically, I've created a huge pool of quiz questions which will be randomized, and which each person will have a random series of questions to complete. So I won't even know ahead of time which particular questions you will have. I'll only see that after you've completed your quiz. So, and that way, everyone should get a different quiz, and basically that should maintain our integrity as you complete your quizzes. After you complete the quiz, you'll get your marks and your feedback. It will be generated automatically. So make sure you do the quizzes. 20 marks, 20% is a big chunk of marks. It's the difference between, for example, a 5 and a 7. So definitely worth having a go at those and doing them. As you can see, you've got 24 hours to do it. It's basically open book because you can do it at any time in that 24 hours, looking up the answers as you go if you wish. Having said that though, it is only worth 5 marks per quiz, so don't overdo it. Don't spend days and days preparing for them. They're basically intended to show that you've appreciated and understood the material in each module. The next assessment I'm going to discuss, I'm jumping to the end, is our major proposal assessment. This one's due on Monday of week 13 before, again, 11:59 p.m. And basically you've got options for this one, lots of options. The first decision you have to make is, do you want to do an essay, or do you want to do what I'm calling a practical resource plus a shorter essay? If you choose to do an essay, it's a 3,500 word essay with a 10% allowance. I know that means a bit more than 3,500, and it can be on any topic related to gender in the law that relates sufficiently to the course. Basically, if you run it past me and I say the topic's okay, you can do that topic for your essay. Similarly, you can pick any topic and create a practical resource. This is for those of you who are more interested in the practicalities of our theories and feminism, queer theory, masculinities, etc. For the practical resource, what you can do is something like a brochure or a poster or a short video, or some people have done a web page, basically any type of practical resource. I am limiting it in scope so that if you're doing something like a brochure, it's to be no more than 2 A4 pages, or it can be a 10-minute audio or visual resource, like a video, or a single A3 page poster. People have done a whole bunch of different things on this. If you want, you could do say a brochure is an obvious one. You could do a fact sheet. In the past, I've actually had someone divide up their A4 pages and do a children's book explaining an issue for kids. You can do a web resource if you want, or a video or a podcast. And to go with that thing, you have to also do an essay, but it's a much shorter essay, 2,000 words. The intention here is you're creating something that a non-lawyer could use. So if you were providing a brochure for a community legal service or a support group or something that can explain things to people on the internet, you'd want it to be accessible to a general audience. So it's not really an essay. But to go with it, to explain and show that you understand our course material, you'll have an essay which explains in more detail the factual or theoretical issue you're engaging with, what the law is that you're engaging with. You wouldn't, for example, in a brochure telling people what their rights are, necessarily cut and paste sections of the law. But you would be discussing that in your essay. You may not cut and paste it, but you discuss it in more detail. You'd also engage with theory and critique in that explanatory essay. It's not just stepping me through your brochure. You wouldn't get good marks if you did that. So what I'd be looking for, say if you did a brochure on name change after transition, for example, would be a kind of how-to guide or a list of places to go and resources for someone looking to make those changes. Then in your essay, you'd be talking about the cisnormativity and heteronormativity of Australian law, how that has changed, why you're doing this particular brochure, because this sort of information is not easily accessible for people, etc. How that and why that is not a mainstream knowledge. Again, critiquing probably from a queer theory point. And so you wouldn't just be going, I put this here because the law in this brochure because the law is this. And I chose green because this reason. And I chose big letters because this reason. You'd be going through and talking about, in an essay form, law and theory and why we need this and what critical problem is being addressed and how you're addressing it. There might be a short part that talk about some of the features of your item. For example, if you were to do a brochure, you'd be saying you've made this as an easy brochure for these reasons, where it could be put in particular places and perhaps easily fit into stands where brochures are offered, or you've taken a particular approach to language, etc., because, and then explain why. But the bulk of that essay would be more around the theory and law. But as I say, some of you are more practically minded. The other thing I'll say with this is if you want to, you can do this in relation to a community legal service or group that you're working with. I'm more than happy, if they're happy for you to use to provide them with a resource, for you to have discussed with them what their need is and to create a resource which will help that. For a couple of reasons. One, I think making a difference in the world is a great thing. Two, it will help your resume. Three, it will help a group that needs your help. So if you're happy to do any of those things, do discuss it with me. The one thing I will have to say for both of these is if you have any plan to talk about interviews with people or the use of research which involves human subjects in any way, we have to get ethical clearance as early as possible, and definitely before you do any discussion with people, because we cannot do interviews with human subjects without going through the university ethics clearance process. So if you're thinking anything along that line in the next couple of weeks, come and see me. Everyone, once you've got an idea, run it by me so that I can give you a tick off and just say, yeah, that fits within the course topics or not. If you can't think of anything, I've thrown together a list and put it up on the major proposal and project proposal sites and on the assessment page, just to give you some ideas. But you can do anything else you can think of that you think would fit with our focus of gender and the law and enable you to show an understanding of the theory that we're talking about. You are not restricted to the case studies I'm looking at, and in fact I would hope you would find a different topic well beyond those case studies to show independent research. Again, up to you what your topic is for this. People have done all sorts of really interesting and exciting work for this one. So with that major proposal, these are the things I'll be looking at for the criteria: that you demonstrate an understanding of course content and theory, whether you do the big essay or the smaller practical project and essay, that you understand whatever law is relevant to your topic, that you're analysing and critically evaluating both the law and theory that you choose to use. You don't have to use all of the theory in the course. You don't even have to, for example, if you're doing feminisms, particularly pick only one stream of feminism, but you do have to be able to articulate the approach you're taking. And part of that will be, and then applying it to your legal and social topics. You'll be expected to do research, and I'll be looking at the quality of your research. And of course, that's going to also fold into your understanding of law and theory, etc. And yes, I do look at writing, I do look at referencing, and you are expected to use the AGLC, that is the Australian Guide to Legal Citation version 4. And it's not a huge chunk of marks, but there are marks attached to that. And I am going to expect it to have a structure, some sort of structure, which makes sense. There's no one right way to do this, but think about your readers. If that's just an essay, that would be an academic style reader like your lecturer. If it is a practical resource, think about the audience for that. Set it up in a way which is accessible to them, and then make the explanatory essay accessible and structured in a way that would make sense to, again, an academic reading it. And of course, I do look at writing, which includes spelling, grammar, etc. Why? Because basically, if you're going to use this law degree or whatever degree you're in and doing this course in any professional context, you've got to have a level of writing which lets your recipients understand what you're talking about, and which is showing respect for them in your care with things like spelling and grammar, and allowing them to respect you. Because some people, even if you have a brilliant mind, if you don't have great grammar, some of your clients are not going to take you seriously. So if you do struggle with that sort of stuff, there are resources on the library website that might be able to help you with it. And that brings us to our final piece of assessment, the project proposal. The project proposal is basically what it says in the name. It's a proposal for your major project. And it's really to let you give me an understanding of what you're doing and to get feedback before you do your final assessment piece. So the major project is worth 60%. The project proposal is only worth 20%, but the feedback you get from it will help you to get better marks in your 60% assignment with any luck. So what are you going to do for this one? You should outline your topic, including the relevant issues of law and gender that you plan to discuss. You should give a short summary of your theoretical approach. That can include things like an in-depth discussion if you're really into theory, So for some people in the past, I've had one student who was super into Giorgio Agamben and his quite in-depth theories, and she did a quite theoretically dense essay for her major project. So at this stage, she was giving quite a bit of information. However, for other people who are doing a simpler, more critical, less theoretical essay, so someone who's saying, I'm talking about the issue of abortion law in Australia from a general feminist critical perspective, might mention a couple of the types of feminists who've influenced their thinking based on what was in the materials in the course, but may not give a huge amount of detail here. A few lines might be what you're looking at. It really depends on what your final level of theory will be. Not everyone has to do a theory-heavy final major project. You might choose to do something with relatively little theory and a lot of practical relevance, or you might choose to do something which is very theoretically dense. It's all about what plays to your strengths and interests. I want you to have the chance to do a major project that you can get really into, that really calls to you, that hopefully doesn't feel too much like a chore, and that feels like something that lets you pursue your own interests. So the amount of theory is going to be up to you, but you do need to show you've at least been aware of and engaged with some theoretical approach, particularly those in our course. I also would like to see a short structure, basically a plan of what you plan to put into your final major project. That might just be a list of the headings of the parts or a list of the topics in the order that you plan to cover them. It might be a bit more detailed, fleshing out, well, in this section I plan to look at this in this way, and then I'll follow on with this related topic which builds on that in this way. So it's really up to you again, but give me something so I can say, yeah, that makes sense, or you need to think about this before you do that, those sorts of things. So let me give you some feedback on what your final document's going to look like. And also I'd like to see a preliminary bibliography. That's so that I can see what sort of reading you're doing about your topic. I can tell you if you're off base or if there's major theory that you're missing, or major writers that you're missing, or if there's somewhere else you should be looking. And it lets you, I hope, get a bit of a start on your reading for your major project. So give me a preliminary bibliography. It's not included in the word count. The total word count for this item is 500 to 1,000 words, so it's quite short. Generally, the better ones have been closer to the 1,000 word end of that range. I've put a minimum limit. I don't do that much with assessment, but I do want to see some genuine planning. So 500 words is a minimum. And I'm sure that for many of you, you'll reach 500 words like that. I mean, we're all lawyers, we know what that's like. So give me, basically what I'm looking for here is an overview of where you're going with your major proposal, so I can give you some feedback, let you know how you might tighten it up, improve it, whether you need to even, whether you've got too much going on. Maybe you need to simplify it. Maybe you need to look at something different. I can help give you some of those hints before you do your major project. I mean, I would love it if you all got great marks for your major project and you all got really strong grades out of this course. That's hopefully what we can do. So this lets me give you some tips and make sure that you're on the right track before you do your major project. And it's due in week 5, so you'll have 7 weeks to keep working on it. The criteria I'll be looking at include, have you done some clear development of your proposed topic for your major project? Have you identified relevant law and related that to issues of gender? Because it has to have law and gender and a nod to theory of some sort. What does your planned theoretical approach look like? I'd be giving each of these categories have 5 marks attached. Have you shown an understanding of relevant course content? It does not have to be all theory. You might pick one brand of feminism, or you might look at a mixture of feminism, queer theory, and masculinities theory, or just masculinities, or just one queer theorist. It's up to you. It depends on what works for your understanding of your own topic. But I do want to see some engagement with this theoretical critique and unpacking of gender and how that applies to law. Even if it's only a few lines, I plan to use a critical feminist approach informed by, I don't know, liberal feminism and the theories of Judith Butler, or something like that. It could be as simple as that, or it could be much more detailed, up to you. I will give, there's marks for the preliminary bibliography showing that you're doing some relevant research and making appropriate choices. And there are marks again for writing, that's grammar, spelling, etc. If you're referencing, AGLC 4 is required, and for your structure, both the structure of this document, so it makes sense to me, and your plan structure for your final document. So that's what we'll be looking for in your assessment in this course.